Hello all in the world of the internet. We are happy to see you on the other end of your screen or hear you on the other side of your listening device and or speaker. You got Mason, you got Brian, you got Grant, the chairman of the boards. We have a mixed bag today going through a few different things, recent pedal releases and some reaction from three people that are in the industry, building rigs, manufacturing pedals, and accessories of our own. And also talking about at-home recording and sort of the basics that you may want to have in order to facilitate doing sessions, doing recording at home, and some of the things that we've experienced and advise and recommend. And some of this may be redundant to many of you that are already doing this, but I know that many of you also ask questions about this to all of us around how to get the rig that you have into your DAW and get recording, get playing stuff at home. And so we're going to go through a little of those three things. But I guess first thing is first. I think the big splash release-wise of the last few weeks has most certainly been the Analogman collaboration with Chase Bliss with their Brothers AM, which, if you haven't heard about it, is in essence a reboot of the Brothers pedal. If you don't know what the Brothers pedal was, it probably came out
a while back,
5 or 6 years ago. I'm guessing. I'll share it on screen here,
if not more.
And it's a gold pedal that you can see here on screen. And I think that the format is pretty similar between the new Brothers and the original, just as every Chase Bliss pedal is that's in kind of this pedal size format, but is, had a little bit of a facelift color wise. And I think you have a similar functionality that you would to the original Analogman King of Tone. Mm-hmm. But you also have this ability to add in a boost by way of the Beano boost, which is ostensibly a germanium treble booster that Analogman makes that is similar to, I think, the Rangemaster, if I'm not mistaken.
Which is divided. Is that divided by 13? That did a reboot of that as well?
I don't know if divided by 13 did a pedal. There's a lot of people that have done versions of Rangemasters in the past, but I think it's sort of the Beano sound is a Clapton reference, and a lot of guys in that era would use those Rangemasters to kind of get a little bit more gain out of a Marshall. Many of you may be aware that Marshalls didn't have that much distortion. I think people get confused when they hear words like plexi and they go, oh yeah, that's kind of like a grindy, distorted rhythm tone. But really, to put this in really simple terms, a plexi or the Marshalls from the, mid to late 60s and early 70s, if you're talking about a 100 watt or even a 50 watt, it's basically like Marshall's version of a twin reverb. Like, they don't really break up very easily. And, there's variations within them that some may be a little bit more distorted, but a lot of the distortion is actually the speakers. And that has a lot to do with it. But they would need pedals like the Rangemaster or a Fuzz Face, because again, those were kind of the only games in town at that point to be able to create distortion. So anyway, back to the Brothers. It, in essence, has that Beano boost as part of the circuit, in addition to the standard King of Tone, and then has sort of the interface of the Chase Bliss, where you can have some MIDI control and expression and all these different dip switches and all that stuff. But I'm curious of your reaction. This is it was a surprising collaboration to me for a few reasons. One reason is that it wasn't but 2 years ago or less that we had an Analogman collaboration with MXR. So I'm surprised that we're seeing another version of King of Tone collaboration with another brand. And I don't know if this is to help address just the lengthy wait list that exists for Analogman in order to get the King of Tone. And so he's just trying to offer other opportunities to be able to sort of capture that circuit from another manufacturer that is able to sort of meet the production demands. The other thing that is surprising to me, or I haven't heard talked about, and maybe it has by the time this episode releases, is wouldn't this be impedance sensitive if it actually is a real treble booster? Because presumably if it's germanium, you're going to have the same problems you would running a buffer into a fuzz face or fill in the blank impedance sensitive pedal, because those just won't work real well. And even if I think there was an order switch on it, if that boost comes after the Brothers, it'll also be subject to that same problem because it'll be getting a lower impedance hitting it, even though it may not be as low as like a high quality buffer. I'm curious your guys' reaction to this collab. I mean, it was beautifully released and the documentary and all that stuff was amazing, but I'm curious what you think about some of those points around this being another one on the heels of it was the Ducatone was the previous one.
Yeah, the Duke.
That sounds right.
With the MXR.
And some of the challenges with the impedance sensitive stuff. I know we talked offline a little bit about this, but I'm curious if you could rehash some of that for the listeners.
Do you want to go, Grant?
Sure. Yeah, I think the one thing that I'm interested about is Mike from Analogman, not Analog Tone. Mike is, he's been around for a while. He understands the processes of making a pedal. He has decided, I don't know most recently how he makes them, but he's decided to keep his wait list and he's happy with that. He's got jobs and pedals to build for years to come. Like if you ordered a King of Tone directly from Analogman today, you would be waiting years. I don't know how many, but quite a few. Let's say 5. And he could get rid of that wait list presumably very quickly by moving to a board house and getting the boards pre-populated, install them into the pedals. He could pump these things out very quickly with a couple of extra people in the shop and get them out the door. He likes to have a wait list, and I have no problem with that. I think a wait list is great for business, and there's some pros to it other than your customers need to be very patient. So when I hear that he's done another collab with another company who can make these in the thousands very quickly, yeah. It feels like, and I know I'm oversimplifying, but it feels like a bit of a clash of values to me. Like I'm curious, and I don't know him at all, so I'm just speculating. I'm curious why, for his own company, he would keep such a long wait list, but then allow collabs that essentially get rid of the wait list entirely. And so that's my first kind of big question. I would just love to hear from him, and I'm literally just curious. I don't have a problem with it, but it just seems odd to me. And so that's my first kind of big question. When I saw it come out, Chase Bliss they are master marketers. Like they're so good at it, and they bring you along in the journey, and they build up anticipation. Like, what are they releasing this time? And they just drop hints along the way, and I love following that. And so I was very curious. And as soon as I found out what it was, which was with everybody else, I'm not a huge King of Tone fan. I have one, and I've always wanted to love them, and I never have, and that's fine. But as soon as I saw that Chase Bliss was doing it in the way that they release it, I'm looking for reasons to buy it. Like, well, man, I know I don't like King of Tones. How can I justify this? And in the end, I couldn't, so I didn't buy it. But I think it's a great idea as far as a pedal goes. Like you get the MIDI control, you get all of the features, you get the original circuit from Mike in air quotes. It's not the original circuit, but obviously he's not going to sign off on a King of Tone pedal that's not a King of Tone sounding pedal.
Yeah.
So you basically get a King of Tone with a bunch of extras, including the boost. And so I'm really intrigued. I really want to play it. I really want to answer some of these questions with the impedance, because I just don't know. My suspicions are that maybe they put in some sort of unbuffer style circuit in it, which is not the same as seeing your pickups, but it gets you closer than if it wasn't there. And so maybe they put something like that into the pedal as well to address some of those issues partially. But yeah, I'm very curious to hear more. And I know, Brian, you ordered it. You're a better man than me. You're supporting Chase Bliss, Analogman.
I never order stuff, so.
And so, yeah, I really want to hear from you when you get the pedal in, and to see like, all right, how's it hold up? Because you're also not a huge King of Tone lover.
I'm not.
Right?
I am not. No, I'm not in love with the king of the tone. So funny enough, when this came out, well, it was teased. I happened to get a message from someone that saw the color of the enclosure, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, what is this?" And I was like, "I'm not sure. Let me look at it." And as soon as obviously you see the stamp on the front, you see it says Analogman, you know exactly what it's going to be. Like, you're like, okay, this is a king of tone. How are they going to do this? So I had the cool opportunity of chatting with Joel through good old Facebook Messenger. Funny enough, friend requested me a couple weeks ago, but I just almost am never on Facebook. So I was like, oh shoot, I have a request, and I saw this from Joel. So I, accepted it, and I said, hey, sorry for the delay. Also, congrats on this new release. It looks really cool. And he sends me like a private link to their mini doc that they did, like unlisted or whatever. And so like what they would send the dealers. And I was like, oh my, cool. I love documentaries, so I'm going to watch it. And after the 26-minute doc, I was like, man, I'm really excited for this. I don't typically just buy new release pedals. I usually wait for it to come out, or I'll get it secondhand or that kind of stuff. And seeing the process of, them going to Mike's shop and seeing how, like, they literally have pieces of paper with, I'm not a pedal builder, so I don't know what these are called, like the transistors or resistors, or like the pots, or not the pots, but like the different, like those
diodes, probably. The
diodes. Yeah, the diodes. And the different things that they would use on the pedals, they're literally like, just watch the doc, you'll see it, but they have all these different diodes on literally a sheet of paper with written down what they are and like where they're from, and like all the details about it. And just seeing the back history of how they do their process and how they repair stuff. And then they went to Japan and they found all this stuff, and then they were sitting on the floor tweaking this pedal, and you could see it in their faces. Like you could see Mike, he was like, the way he was smiling, it wasn't like a fake smile. Like you could tell he was genuinely excited about it. Like he was like I was watching it, and at the moment that he, like, the way he smiled, I was like, okay, like this is like, he really like believes in it. There's plenty of arguments through, the wonderful gear pages. If you're ever on them on Facebook or on the forums and stuff, that people, will basically say this is a clone. I don't know if that's the exact argument. I guess
people say that about the Analogman, or the King of
the Brothers Analogman collab. Someone's like, this is just a glorified clone. I wouldn't say it's a clone, because they're literally
They mean a clone like a replica of another pedal, or a clone in like the K with the K.
Like a clone, like kind of like a clone.
That just is ignorant, because it's pretty well known that it's a blues breaker circuit. I don't think anybody's ever mistook it.
Exactly. So like seeing people arguing about it, and I was like, sure, you can argue all you want. As Grant said, I'm not a huge King of Tone fan. I think it's a really cool pedal. I think it sounds really good. My biggest gripe is the output level is so low. Like you have to go almost 3, 2, 3, and maybe I'm just running it wrong. 2 or 3,
no,
even to really get the push.
That's just the circuit. It's the blues breaker circuit.
Yeah.
So if you had the original blues breaker, which it's based on, is the black Marshall pedal that came out in the 90s, you pretty much have to run the output at max. Like it doesn't have a lot of output. There's not a lot of boost.
Yeah.
Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
And this is why there's 2 channels. Pretty much most people that I know, including me, and I have a King of Tone on my Nashville inspired board on the floor. It has a King of Tone, and I'm running. I think that when I talk to like guys in Nashville that use it, and there's quite a few. A lot of them say, I think they said every knob, somewhere between 1 and 2 o'clock.
Really?
That's on both channels. Yeah, that's how they run it.
And that,
which is, in the room is pretty brutal. And we'll get into this when we get into some of the recording strategies. I have my cabs out of this room when I'm recording. So I don't hear it with like all of its, all the moving air. I'm just hearing it through monitors, which is more palpable or palatable when when you're recording something like that. But in the room with everything like that, it's like, oh my gosh, it's a lot of volume.
Yeah.
But I hear what you're saying. It's absolutely true. And that's indicative of the circuit. And even in the JHS version in the Morning Glory, he addresses that. I think that I can't remember if that's just baked in or whether that toggle switch adjusts that amount. I can't remember.
Toggle switch is a higher gain.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like a higher gain. Well, like the Morning Glory, I've had the Morning Glory multiple times. It's probably one of my favorite pedals.
It's ironic though that you don't like because they're ostensibly the same circuit.
I think it's because the Morning Glory isn't as hot though, isn't as quiet. I think that's the thing. Is like this is just how I've always played. I'll run the output, like the gain and volume. I run the volume more than I run the gain because I don't want it to be super like really fuzzy or dirty sounding. And sometimes it'll just, because I run my amp or whatever I'm running, like the edge of breakup type of thing. So they're kind of working together. I've used the King of Tone and I do like it. I think it's cool. I'm not a fan because of that. I think it's just because it's this. I have such I have my way of how I know if I can set pedals at noon and just barely tweak them, I can get what I like out of it. But having this pedal where you basically have to dime it out, it just throws me off. And it's one of those two that it's, the buy it secondhand. I literally saw someone list one for like $800. And I get, you could get into the whole Klon discussion of people buying them for $5,000 and stuff. But like anytime I've had two King of Tones and I've turned around and sold them. But yeah, it was just, and they were like, happened to be in a trade deal for a setup or something. So I've never had to buy one, but it was just, I'm really excited because the smaller form factor, the MIDI is really cool. I don't have a lot of space on my board. I literally have a TU2 size space for my personal board. So it kind of works out perfectly. It literally comes in today. I think it's out for delivery right now. So I will, once I have some time, probably today or tomorrow, which is funny, I probably won't even mess with it today. I'll, kind of assess it. But I've watched very minimal videos because I've found that I don't want other people's positive and negative comments to influence my decision, especially if they're playing it. We're talking about it in our general idea. I'm not going to say it's a great pedal. I'm not going to say it's a bad pedal until I've actually played it. But it makes me really excited just to see the process. I said that to Joel. I was like, man, hats off to your crew for doing this marketing thing. Like, it just made me appreciate the pedal more. So I'm excited for it.
The thing I'm a little hesitant about with it is I feel like whenever anyone else plays a King of Tone, they sound amazing. And whenever I play it, I sound terrible. And so I know if you send me any videos of this, like, oh, I need to get it. It sounds so good. And I'm just, it's a trap I've fallen into and will continue to fall into over and over again as the years move on. So please don't send me any clips. Don't send me anything because it's just going to spend money and I'm going to regret it. And
no clips.
But I'm curious to hear. Exactly. I'm curious. Yeah, very curious to hear it.
Well, I know that I've said in a previous episode that when I'm in the room with the amp, when I'm playing the King of Tone, I don't like how it sounds. But when I hear it in playback, I think it like works really well in a lot of contexts, especially kind of like bluesy strat neck pickup sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But I want to get to more pieces of our conversation today in this sort of mixed bag, this potpourri of tone. But before we do, I want to break for a moment to talk about a few of the sponsors that make the podcast possible. I'll turn it over to you all.
All right. So I want to tell you guys first about the Guitar Sanctuary. These guys have been a sponsor of ours for quite some time. And Brian himself loved them so much that he used to work there. Back in the day, Brian worked at the Guitar Sanctuary, guitar slinging, testing out amps. That would be the excuse, right? Like, I'm just going to go make sure the tubes are working while I test out this AC30. Yeah. So Brian would be that guy, testing out all the gear at the Guitar Sanctuary, of which there is a lot, a ton of the gear, if not all of the gear that we're going to be chatting about. As far as it relates to your guitar, you can purchase from the Guitar Sanctuary directly in McKinney, Texas. My favorite thing about the Guitar Sanctuary, because I don't know what it is, but I always find myself delaying making phone calls. Like, I'll do it in a sec when I have more time. Is you can just send them a quick text and you can ask them a question. So welcome to the 21st century. And thank you, Guitar Sanctuary, for making that happen. So ask for Brian or any of the crew there. You can go online. Different Brian. There's multiple Brians here over in the US of A. And this is Brian Meter over at the Guitar Sanctuary. He'll help you out along with the rest of the amazing crew over there. Visit in person in McKinney, Texas, or visit them online at guitarsanctuary.com. You're going to love it. And I also want to tell you guys about Neural DSP. We are all frequent users of the Quad Cortex and the Nano Cortex, 2 pieces of incredible hardware for your pedal board. And they do an amazing suite of plugins, which are making their way, being able to be uploaded onto the Quad Cortex. And the plugins are incredible. And we're going to be chatting about these plugins in the next kind of section of this podcast, I assume, because this is an essential part of recording at home is plugins. And so Neural DSP, if you are interested in checking them out and their plugins and their hardware, do so at neuraldsp.com. If you want to check out their plugins, you can do it and save with the code Chairmen, CHAIRMEN, and you can save 30% off any of their plugins that are 90 days or older. So definitely do that. If you like saving cash, use the code Chairman at neuraldsp.com for any of their plugins 90 days or older. Lastly, certainly not leastly. One
note on that, if I could, before we get to the last one.
Please do.
Hot off the presses on this. I just got an email as this is being recorded, and that will coincide with the release of this particular podcast. Nano OS 2.0. They are adding 3 new EQs, 3 new utilities. So you have a utility gate, volume, and doubler. 8 new compressors, 4 new wahs, 2 new filter effects, 9 new overdrives.
Oh my gosh.
2 bass overdrives, 6 new modulation effects, 5 new delays, 5 new reverbs. So lots more functionality being added to this in this update.
And this is for the Nano Cortex, we're saying.
It's for the Nano.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Let's go.
This is a rig you can literally play anywhere.
And the thing I love about the Nano, which is a total side, but the Nano is obviously like the little brother of the Quad. It can't do everything the Quad can do, but it does the essentials and it does them really well. But with most small kind of profilers, it is not easy. Let's say that to make it simple. It's not easy to capture your existing hardware, your overdrive, your favorite amp. And everything you need is built into the one unit, which is probably my favorite thing about it. And it just means that, you're at a gig and you're playing with a guitar player who has a new Brothers AM and you want to capture the sound that they're playing because it sounds awesome. You can do it from your Nano Cortex and you don't need any extra hardware. Like stuff like that, I think is really well thought out. And so it's cool to hear that they've done a whole bunch of extras on this new update as well, which is great. So check them out, neuraldsp.com. Thanks for that, Mason. Lastly, I want to tell you guys about a friend named Brad. Brad is the B in BTPA. That's probably not true, but it works. So Bestronix is actually the B. Bradtronics, BTPA.com. And we all shop at BTPA to get the parts we need for pedalboard builds, whether it's plugs, cable. They do a whole range of plugs from a bunch of different manufacturers. So you can actually choose kind of the type. Brian's on screen right now, if you're listening, holding up bags of goodies from BTPA.
And wearing shorts, which you almost never see him in.
I mean, it did kind of blow out the white balance on the camera there for a second, but we're recovering. We're coming back here. And so ask for Brad at Bestronix if you need any DC power, raw cable for patch leads, anchors, zip ties, anything you need to finish off your pedal board. Brad can help you out at Bestronix. Use the code, again, for the money savers out there. My hand is up. Use the code DACHAIRS, DACHAIRS, and you'll get 10% off your order, which means you can buy one more pedal with all that money you saved and fit it on that board if you so desire. I would say you can save it, but we're all guitar players here, and saving money is not our first inclination.
Yellow.
So Dutch Airs to save 10% at btpa.com. I'll throw it back to you, Mason.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm sorry. I'm going to cut you off real quick. I got a shot at the BTPA.
I thought you were going to talk about the shorts.
Oh, no. I pulled out my air conditioning to fix it. So it's hot in here today. So I have shorts on. I probably shouldn't be wearing a sweatshirt, but they also do custom printed heat shrink in all sorts of different sizes. So like if you're building your own loom or you're doing cables and stuff and you want your brand on it, or you don't want people to steal your stuff, do it. It's worth it.
Or you just want something that says Cody West on it.
Yeah, I mean, unless you wanted to say Cody West was one of my clients, just reach out and
or you can just label it Loom in case you forget what it is. It will be written right there.
I do that all the time. I label my delay as delay because Anyway, back to you.
So we've talked a bit about Analogman Chase Bliss collab. Congrats to them on that. Another cool device that has also made quite a splash here in the last few weeks is from the good folks over at Tone King. Now, Tone King used to be the brand of the great amp builder Mark Bartel. I think around 2011, he sold that to the Premier Builders Guild. Mm-hmm. For some of you, that may ring a bell.
Morgan.
Which was kind of a consortium of amp and guitar brands that all got bought by the Premier Builders Guild, and it was like Two Rock, Fano,
Morgan,
Baker.
Are they under that too? Morgan?
No, not at the no, not. I don't think Morgan. Morgan was still small at this time. This has been around 2011.
This isn't the same as boutique amp distribution.
We're getting there. We're getting there.
Got it.
So it was originally bought by this consortium, that had a lot of these brands,
right.
And then that got defunct. And then I think in the selling off of the pieces, it was then absorbed by a company called Boutique Amp Distribution,
Gotcha.
Also known as BAD. And that's the company that manufactures and is sort of the distributor and manufacturer of Morgan and Friedman and
Bad Cat?
Tone King, and they don't do Bad Cat.
Ironically
not that I know of.
Which would make sense if they're bad.
Wampler.
Oh, okay.
Was it Matthews Effects?
Yeah.
Soldano. I think they do Bogner pedals. I don't know about amps. I don't think they do it, the Bogners. Anyway, Egnator. So they do a lot.
Nice.
And they've come out with these series of tube-based preamps that have power amp simulations done digitally and impulse responses done digitally with DI outputs. And they've done them with Friedman, and from what I can see have been very successful, where they have kind of like the BE, like the Brown Eye IR or something like that, or BEIR or BEODIR, and then they had a Jakey Lee version. And now they've come to doing it with Tone King as kind of more of a Fender clean type thing. And I've got it up here for our viewing pleasure. Let me pull this up so that people can visualize if you're somebody who is watching and not just listening. We'll do our best to describe it to you. But what you're seeing is basically something around the size of a Strymon Timeline or so, slightly taller, maybe about the same width, maybe slightly deeper. But I would say, if you can fit a Timeline on your board, you can fit this thing on your board. But the cool thing about it is you've got inputs, you've got sends and returns, so you can have a stereo effects loop. You have stereo outputs. You have it MIDI controllable. It can take between 9 to 12 volts DC, although requires 9 watts. So it's not an insignificant amount of power, but it's definitely pedalboard friendly in that regard. But the very cool thing about it is you have, a reverb in tremolo selection, just like you would on an ordinary Fender amp. You can bypass the effects loop. You can bypass the IRs, and you can also channel select. And so you have the ability to have a fully analog 12AX7 based preamp. And so the front end is still fully tube, and then the back end of the power amp simulation and the speaker cabinet and the impulse responses are all done digitally. And I think a lot of people are finding that these types of units are becoming really popular as kind of the carryover between people that don't want to fully go digital with something like the UA pedals. And apparently this has 3 tubes in it. And so crazy. I don't know if it's because they're using them as different gain stages, or they're using one for the tremolo circuit and one for the reverb circuit. I don't know. I don't think that there's a reverb tank in there, but maybe they're driving the digital reverb with some sort of tube. I don't know. But whatever it is, I've heard very good things about it. I know that you guys have too. We've talked about this before we started. And this looks really interesting for somebody like me who is resistant to the digital domain. And I kind of wanted to still have one foot in that analog tube-based domain. This would certainly be a huge consideration for me. The other really cool thing that they're doing on this and in all the Friedman pedals is kind of avoiding the issue that you have with like the Iridium or with the Walrus ACS1, is that they have a stereo effects loop on it, so you don't have to worry about the issue of running your wet effects after it and not being able to capture it through headphones. You have the ability to be able to use the stereo effects loop, put all the wet effects after the preamp, but before the power amp and speaker sim, and be able to use the headphones and have that all captured in the same thing. Because this is always an issue that we've run into and we've talked about many times, is that as good as the Iridium is, or as good as the Walrus ACS1 is, or as good as fill in the blank UA amp simulators are, if you run the wet effects after, which you should, if it's something that has gain, you can't capture them by way of the headphone jack. So having a stereo effects loop just gives you that benefit, and you don't have any concern about whether you're going to be able to get it all in your practice headphones or whatever it is. So I think that these are really cool. I really like what they're doing here, and I like that now there's a Fender option to the more Marshall-y based and hot rod and Marshall based options that were previously available with the Friedman. Your guys' thoughts?
I have a couple, if that's okay.
Go ahead. You go. Yeah, go.
I have a question for you, Mason, because it seems like you have your head around this a bit better than I do. Is the input TRS and the send, like, can you do a full stereo in, stereo send? I see it's a left-right return.
Well, let's investigate.
While you're doing that, while you're looking that up, I want to tell you how my buddy just got this in a day ago, and how he's using it, which I thought was clever. And this might be in the manual. I have no idea. I haven't gone deep on this thing yet, as you can tell. But he firstly says it sounds incredible, and they got the low end right, which I thought was cool. So he's big into Fender, knows them well, and he said this one is actually a great recreation. They did a good job. But he is using his preamp from his Dr. Z. I can't remember off the top of my head which one he has, but his Dr. Z has an effects loop. So he's using the preamp from his Dr. Z, putting that in the loop, the 2 amp in from amp send. So he has a preamp in his Dr. Z, the preamp in the Imperial, this Tone King pedal, and he can switch back and forth between them. So he can get 2 different flavors of amp into the one power section built into the Tone King, which I thought was really clever. If you already have a tube amp, you know it, you love it, and you still want to do some silent rehearsal or straight to your DAW or into the system, you can still get partially the preamp of that amp that you absolutely love and switch back and forth and get quite creative with how you're routing it. So I thought that was really cool. Then on top of that, it has the effects loop, which is great. And so there's a lot on this that is pretty impressive. You can obviously update it via USB. So I'm very, very curious. When you think about the Brothers AM that we just chatted about as a release and this, this thing gets me very excited. The Brothers AM, I was like looking for reasons to buy just because it looks cool. But for me, this is super practical. This is something I would use very often, being a silent solution, but still gives you kind of those tube, preamp sections on there as well, which is cool. So for those watching, Mason is just bringing up the manual. And if you're listening, we actually have our own YouTube channel, Chairmen of the Boards on YouTube. I know you've heard of it. I know you love it. And you can actually check out the visuals here that we have going on. Mason, I can't read what you're putting up there, so I'll hand it back to you.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the manual here, and it gives you sort of a visual of the rear control panel. And I don't think that the send jack is stereo or the input is stereo. It only indicates that the returns are stereo, which to me is not an issue. I think that ordinarily the stereo effects would come in the effects loop anyway. And just for I know this is sometimes a confusing piece to somebody or to people that sometimes will say this. They'll say, well, if I don't start the effects chain in stereo, then, how is it stereo? And for whatever that first stereo device is, it needs to come in mono. There's no way to get to the stereo unless the source that's feeding it, is stereo to begin with. But we don't have stereo guitars typically. So there's always going to be a point where there's a mono source that then splits into a stereo thing. So that's what's happening here. And the other thing that Grant mentioned, just to reiterate it, is because it has, if you're looking at the control panel here, the top jacks or set of jacks read input, send, which is just the mono send, and then return left, return right. The bottom set of jacks say 2 amp in, from amp send, 2 amp return, and then there's a headphone jack, and those are just the 1/4 inch jacks. Then to the right of that, you have your XLR outputs that can feed the front of house or your DAW or whatever, and a ground lift and a MIDI and a USB. The really cool thing about what Grant was talking about and his friend is you don't necessarily have to use the power amp section of this, the simulation of the power amp at all. And you can bypass the reverb effects and all that. And if you wanted to have a Fender style preamp that you could flip flop with your existing amplifier, this is a really cool thing to do. And they also do this similarly with their Synergy products, which is also made by Boutique Amp Distribution, where you can, in essence, have any amp with an effects loop you can do this with, where in essence what you do is you wire this into the effects loop and it mutes the built-in preamp to your amplifier and puts this one as the preamp to your amplifier. So you can say, let's say you have a Marshall, some sort of modern Marshall that has an effects loop, because we know the vintage ones don't. You could take this and say, okay, I want to have my full Marshall preamp as it comes in the amp for this sound, but then I'm going to switch over to this Fender preamp sound, even though it's still going into a Marshall power amp. And you could do that sort of flip flop, which I think is really, really cool if you just want to have some varieties of sound. Because most of the sound of all these amps is in the preamp section and in the tone stack.
That's your 80%.
Much less of it is in the power section, where I know that people will make all these claims like, well, it has a really EL84 sound, or it has a really, EL34 sound. And then they immediately just say Marshall or Vox or whatever it is, whatever that tube complement would ordinarily be. You can get Fender style or sounding things out of an EL84. And the proof of that is the Fender Blues Junior. Nobody says, wow, this really sounds so Voxy, this Fender Blues Junior. Did you know that those are EL84s? So it's kind of like, those mean something, they don't mean everything, and more of the sound is happening before it ever gets to the power tubes. So you can get some interesting sounds and really get something that's more Fender adjacent in your Marshall by doing something like this. So really cool, I think, all around as far as that pedal is concerned. Like this to me, And I say this as somebody like I've used the Nano Cortex, I've used the Quad, I've used it in videos, I've used it in some of our interviews, and there's a place for it for sure. I think we even saw that John Mayer at Coachella used a Quad Cortex,
which is crazy.
So there are people that will use it and understand where its benefits are, and I'm 100% in that camp. As far as amp simulation pedals, this sort of device for me is that's the best that you can get that's available right now. And we know in a Fender style thing, it's going to take pedals great, all Fender, and this is kind of I think the Tone King is kind of a deluxe reverb style thing. They take pedals great, so stuff's going to work great in front of them. The design has been established by way of some of the Friedman stuff and Synergy stuff that's come before that has similar feature sets, now adapting that to pedals. So you're kind of getting a tried and true design philosophy here. So for anybody who has been considering making the jump or is considering going to a UA Dream, I would, not that there's anything against the UA Dream. The UA Dream is smaller. It's probably easier to power because it doesn't have three tubes in it. But boy, if somebody are saying, what should I get? I'm inclined to tell them to get this thing. If they want a great clean sound that's going to take pedals well, it's got the stereo effects loop, it's got the headphones thing. I think it's a really well thought out idea, really well thought out product.
Yeah. It's well, I have a couple questions and I'll give my original thought. The Guitar Sanctuary, they actually had 2 of these in stock. We were talking about how they did sell all of them, but they have a couple left. So when this pod drops, I'm not sure if they'll still have them. But Brian Meter showed me this originally. He's like, it's really cool. And I was like, yeah, it's cool. It's another sim. But the more and more I dove into it, just like we're doing now, the more exciting I agree, it is. Just the fact that seeing all these jacks, people will be like, oh, well, how am I getting the stereo signal? How am I running this? How is this going to work for my board? Because you'll get stuff that are say the Tonex, call it Tonex. Okay, the Tonex, the big one, that it's a mono input and dual mono output. So then you can.
This is not smaller than the.
No,
this is about the size of a Tonex, like the original one.
I would say it's a little bit pedal. The Tonex. I would say it's not as wide. Maybe it's a little bit more narrow. I could be wrong. I saw it in the box and stuff. I didn't pull it out. But yeah, it's very similar to the Tonex. But the Tonex, it has a headphone. I think it has a headphone out on it. I'm trying to remember.
Yep.
It does. Okay, thank you. The one, I've done a bunch of X1 builds and they don't, except through the right side of the output jack. But those things, if you want to use the headphone jack on it, you have to put it all the way at the end of your chain. But if you're running stereo, then you run into the issue where you can't actually run the stereo. So people are putting it, after their drives, before their wets, they're mimicking as if it's an effects loop, but then you lose that headphone capability. Where the fact that you have all the send and return options, and the return is stereo, and then the XL outputs. My only thing I'm interested in, maybe I'm just missing it, how it says input send, and then the bottom says 2 amp in from amp send.
That's what we were just talking about, Brian.
Okay, where
you can connect it to it. Yes, you can connect it to an amplifier, like a regular, let's say a combo amp or Hot Rod Deluxe or whatever. And you can connect it to the effects loop to toggle between the preamp and the Hot Rod Deluxe.
Okay.
And then the Imperial being the preamp.
Got it.
It's still sharing the same power.
Sorry, I was looking at the back panel and reading it before I could ask my question, and I didn't hear you guys explain that. So yeah, looking at it, does the manual say what the million? Because it says 9 to 12 VDC, DC 9. Is that 9? I can't read that.
So at 9,
just 9 watts.
So it's 9 watts. So at 9 volts, you'll need 1,000 milliamps. So power equals current times voltage. So voltage times 1 amp is 9 watts. Yeah. 9 volts times 1 amp.
Which is impressive because because the real issue with these tube pedals and powering them is just getting enough of the current to these filaments, and we're able to definitely like the technology is caught up where it's inexpensive enough for us to be able to deliver power to a 12AX7 so that it actually has some semblance to what it would see in the world of a real amplifier, as far as the tubes are concerned. Because in a lot of the old tube designs, they were really starving the current to the tubes, and it doesn't really react the right way. And I feel like that's been bridged in the last few years, and you're seeing a lot more high quality representations of tube equipped overdrives, distortions, amp simulators that really do get in the ballpark circuit wise, and in terms of the current that is supplied to them, and that you're actually not just having an ornamental LED tube.
That's it. If this thing was at 300 milliamps or something like that, like, nope, they're not running the tubes properly, but they'll be running a plate voltage of 300, 350 volts, something like that to those tubes. And so it takes a bit of juice to pull that all off. I
mean, just to give you a sense, like DC to DC converters, when we first made our boost in 2000, or we're doing the design in 2013, I feel like we were paying something crazy for them. Like, the two numbers are sticking out are like $11 to $13 for one. And so it was as expensive as our enclosures were at the time
for one piece.
For this one piece
brutal.
That was just giving us, the ability to run, 12 volts rail to rail, and so that was crazy. Now that cost is,
I think we pay $250 now, $250 maybe $3. Yeah,
400%. Yeah. Well, this is not considering the tariffs, right? But
true. This may change again very quickly.
but even at 100% or 140% or whatever we're supposedly going to be hit with. The technology, it's the same thing with, like, I was talking with some camera guys, because we're always shooting content and we're using, SSDs and stuff like that. And to get a 1 terabyte SSD, even a few years ago, it was like, $500,
crazy.
And now you can get like a super fast 1 terabyte solid state SSD for, $100, or less sometimes.
I think I just bought that 2 weeks ago. That exact one you just pulled up, 1 terabyte, and it was about 150 Canadian.
Yeah. And if you time it out with a Prime Day deal or something like that, it's even less.
Crazy.
So I'm swimming in SanDisk 1, 2, and 4 terabyte
same
hard drives.
Same. It's cheaper to buy one of those things on like Prime Day. Like I bought like a 5 terabyte one. And it was really, really cheap. And it's like that or upgrade for like a terabyte through Mac, which is like 9 times the price. But yeah, that's crazy. But yeah, overall, I'm really excited about it. I have to go to the sanctuary today to pick up something. And I'm like texting the manager to say, hey, could you pull one of those aside so I can mess with it for 20 minutes? Just because it sounds really cool. I'm curious, maybe I missed it. Do you guys know if the USB-C can act as like an interface? Kind of like, I doubt that.
I don't know. I thought it was maybe more for like programming it
and IR stuff. Yeah, I didn't think it was. I figured it wasn't just because of it having tubes and everything. I didn't think it would. I mean, that's asking for too much. I think I could see that being put on a lot of I would probably put it on the board as long as the tone sounds like what I want. But like the MIDI is really cool too. The fact that the MIDI you can control all that stuff it's just really cool. And they did it really well, especially my power question was like, if you get this and you have a Chairmen Zuma, like these are the requirements that you need to know in order to power the correct way with the milliamps and everything. So like a Chalks, obviously you can just power from a port. So anyway, but yeah.
Yeah, you need a current doubler no matter what you do, unless you use a Chalks crux but on a Zuma, you'd need a current doubler to pull it off.
Yeah. Exactly.
Zumba.
Yeah. All right. Well, last thing that we promised that we talk about as part of kind of the potpourri, the tone potpourri today, it is about recording at home and some of the basics that you may need in order to get into it. And, I can elaborate on what I have, but it's probably more than just the basics. I think most people would agree the basics are having some sort of quality interface. On the low end, I know a lot of people get the Focusrite, Scarlett, whatever, I forget what they're called.
Yep,
what
the Scarlett series.
Yeah, and they're or the Apogee Duet or something like that. I think UA now has like several options of even like budget versions of what they have.
The Volt, yeah.
I have the big Apollo.
Twin? Is it the Twin?
Because I have an X4 on one for one computer, but the stuff that I have all my cabinets hooked up to it has 8.
Oh, nice. The rack.
Yeah, so it's got 8. So I have 2 412s in an ISO room with SM57s on each of the speakers. So I have 8 channels coming in, and then
all different speakers, I assume,
that pipes in all different speakers.
Nice.
All wired. The cabinet's all wired 8 ohm, and most of them are a couple hundred watts because like one of them has like an EV, a Vintage 30, an Alessandro GS64, or whatever the Alessandro ceramic kind of American style speaker is, and a G1265, and then the other one is a Celestian Gold, and I'm trying to greenback, and really, what else is in that one?
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
If you're wanting to run a super high wattage speaker, but it's also hooked up to the same 412 cab with a lower wattage speaker in it as well, how do you make sure you don't blow the lower, or is everything high enough to where you never come close?
Well, you're wiring them as all part of one speaker cabinet. So you have, if you had 4 100-watt speakers that are wired to 8 ohms, you have 400 watts, and so we're not concerned, I'm not running them as each individual jacks, like speaker jacks. I'm running them as one cabinet at 8 ohms.
With a ton of wattage for the cab.
And they're all mic'd. And then I have baffling too in a cross pattern. Now I'll tell you this, if anybody decides they want to do this, I spent all sorts of money to have this custom baffle made that was going to separate the 4 speakers so that I could wheel that in against the 412, and then I'd have the goosenecks to the mics in each one of the speaker positions. And I thought, well, we're going to have all this bleed because it's in the same room. And even though the cabinets point away from each other and are just pointing into, MDF, wrapped MDF, they hardly made any difference, any detectable difference. It was shocking how little bleed there was amongst those 57s. So it was just one of those things that was customized. So I couldn't say, well, hey, buddy, I don't actually need this. Because the workmanship was all great, everything was perfect about it, but it just was one of those things where it's oh, well, I probably should have tested, this more thoroughly before I had this made. I was convinced that I would have needed it.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I have those in there. I have the mics in there. And basically I can just select on the Apollo which mic I want active, So there is in some cases an impedance mismatch because I do have some Fenders, like I have a Bandmaster here that's 4 ohms. So there will be an impedance mismatch, and just in case you don't know, how to deal with that, you can do that as long as it's not more than double or half. So if you have a 4 ohm head, let's say like a Bandmaster, you can go up to 8 or down to 2, but you can't go to 16. So you can't go more than double.
Will you damage the amp
by doing that? By going too high, you definitely can.
Okay,
you definitely
so it's
can.
The amp that's going to go, not the. It won't damage the speaker necessarily.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. You will damage the amplifier, and so the thing that I usually do, and basically the main consequences is you may have a little bit less headroom or something like that, but I wouldn't say it's perceptible in a huge way. It's not like the amp is all of a sudden doesn't sound like itself anymore. And most of my stuff here has selectable impedance on all of them, except for I think the Bandmaster is the only 4 ohm, and then my AC30 is the only 16 ohm. But honestly, I like that the sag on it because even though I'm in here, I want to get some grind out of that Vox, and it's a little easier to get it at a lower volume. Even though I'm not even in the room with it, it's still like you can tell that thing is blistering.
Yeah.
But this is just all to say there's a lot of different ways to do this. This is a very crazy setup where I've got that, and then I've got Great River mic pre's that all those feed into. And then that's coming in, to the I use Logic, but I'm kind of the only one, I guess. Most people use Pro Tools.
I use Logic.
That I know. And so anyway, controlling all through UA console, it's great. I get great sounds out of it. And then I have effects that I run in post, that are all hardware effects, from the SDE 3000 to SPX 90s. I got Lexicon MPX 1s, all that stuff. And I just use that for, I try to do all hardware effects for processing. I try not to use plugins. Every once in a while I will, but mostly use hardware effects processing and all this stuff.
So you always record the dry guitar through the amp. It's mic'd into your DAW, and then you'll run that DAW through post.
Yeah. So what I'll do is I'll have the mic'd amp coming in to the Apollo, or coming into the Great River, going into the Apollo. The Great River mic pre's though have split outputs, so you can have one side that's going XLR into the Apollo, and then the other side can go a 1/4 inch or TRS out. And you can take that to feed your rack-based effects.
Very cool.
And so you can do that, and then just send them into whatever it is that you need. So those have to go into a summing mixer. So they're all getting a feed, and then you can adjust which ones are feeding out to the actual effects themselves, and then those can be processed separately. You could also do it with inserts, use the inserts from the Apollo and do it that way as well if you wanted to kind of treat it more like a mix bus style thing. But that's how I do it when I'm recording guitars in here, and it works great, and it sounds great, and it's way more complicated than it needs to be. For people at home, I honestly would say if it's just you and a guitar and one amp or amp sims, I think just getting something simple like the Apogee Duet, the Focusrite, the simpler versions of the Apollo, the Twin, or even some of the more basic ones than that. I forget if it's called the Arrow or something like that.
The Arrow. They
have some more simplified versions that they've done that even have some effects built into it that are kind of like the basics that you would use, like kind of like a Neve, and maybe some compressors and stuff like that. I think that those are all great. And honestly, you could use GarageBand for a lot of the stuff if you wanted to, or upgrade to Logic or one of these other DAW systems. But you really don't need much, and people crap on the 57, but I use the 57 for everything in there because I know that sounds so well. I know exactly what to do with it. I know if it's not giving me what I want, I know where to move it to get what I want. And it's just a really reliable bass line. And also in the case of demonstrational content, everybody know, if you're a guitar player, that sound. So it's not like we're giving somebody some obscure microphone that they don't have any context for.
Yeah.
It's like everybody knows this, everybody's used one. And so we're giving them something that is very consistent and within sort of the range that of their sort of tonal vocabulary.
Yeah.
I'll say.
Love it.
I like it.
That's really cool.
I remember
the
when
other
we visited you.
Sorry, you go, Brian.
Sorry, I was going to say, I remember when we visited you back when we were all together for the 100th in May, and last year May, and it's still April. My months are crazy. But and you talked us through the whole setup, and you explained with the speakers and stuff. So yeah, as crazy as it sounds, I think it sounds amazing. When we were playing through it, sounded really great. So yeah. Great.
I was also going to mention that for the interface side of things, depending on the gear you own already, you should also just check to see if the gear you own can act as an interface. Like I know the Tonex ones as an example. I assume the Tonex pedal, the Tonex pedal as well. That can be your interface. You could run through all your pedals. You can plug into that with a USB, and then you're straight to your computer, and you can hook that into your DAW. So depending on your needs, like if it's just for rehearsing, don't spend $2,000 on like an X4, like a UA 4-channel interface. You don't need to spend that kind of money. Like just something basic.
Really
and
basic.
Exactly, get a Scarlett, or your Tonex might already have it, or I'm sure this will be more and more common to where very soon it'll probably be like my amp sim can't act as my interface. Like why didn't they put that in? Like it'll become more and more normal. And so just double check the gear you already have and make sure that can't do it for you. And then if not, get something that's a couple $100 and it'll make everything that we're talking about much easier. And then if you get an interface, and if I know a lot of guitar players listening, they mainly play at home. Most guitar players don't gig. Most guitar players play because they just love playing guitar, and so they play at home. And so in that case, it could be the question of, well, do I get an interface or an amp sim? Mm-hmm. And these days, getting something like an interface for $200 and then being able to swap out your plugins in your DAW, which will act like your amp, along with many other things, other effects that you could also add in there. Now you can get a whole suite of amps digitally on your computer and select the one you want. It can still be MIDI controllable. You can do a whole bunch of things with this and go as crazy as you want. But you also can get less and less hardware if you are, again, happy to play that way into your computer. I would personally still prefer to play through a real amp and move air and all that, but that isn't everyone's reality. If you're in a small apartment or whatever it is, you can just get the majority of this on your laptop and get a couple of your favorite hardware pedals and you're good to go. And so again, pointing back to Neural for the plugins, there are plugins of all types, all amp types, all sorts of things for you to explore. And it's pretty cool. And the plugins are very impressive. So I don't know if you guys would add much to that. Again, I'm more, if I have 5 minutes to play, I'm plugging into an amp. I'm not plugging into my DAW unless I have to record something. So I don't know if you guys would add anything or change anything that I've just said on that front.
I mean, save 30% off with their plugins with the discount code that we have too. So I mean,
there you go.
A shameless plugin. I'm just gonna double pun that one. And but no, I mean, I was so excited to say that.
You're all focused on the pun, man.
I really was. No, so and I really think that's really true too for like the plugin stuff. Like, yes, tube amps are. I have tube amps. They're great for like all my tutorial stuff. That I provide a client overview video for all my client builds, and I used to have, the ACS one. I built an ACS one, a Dream, a Boss IR2, and like a Tonex like sliding rack thing. And I had them all separated. They were all going on my DAW. It was really cool. Looked really fancy. I had people like, "Oh, that's such a great idea." And like after about like 2 weeks of using it, I realized after I got the Morgan Amp Suite from Neural, I was not using those pedals, and like I wasn't using the tube amp just because like where I'm located and stuff. I don't have the luxury of just cranking my amps. I could get an aux box or the torpedo stuff, but it just worked out really well to use the code. Honestly, no pun intended. I used the code and I got some of the plugins, and to this day I still use, like, I have my Logic session pulled up. I have my Morgan amp suite and the Mateus amp suite, and they do the job, especially because those amp suites come with delay and reverb and modulation pedals, like the different pedals and stuff built into it. I am not I play on weekends at my church with my couple of my pedals I have, but I'm not a session player. I'm not tracking. I'm not doing stuff, but it'd be really easy for me to take literally this, which I think I got it for
which is holding up the Focusrite interface.
Yeah, it's the Focusrite. It's the Solo. I could literally take this in my, in my backpack with my computer and my guitar, and I could do, I could go play. I could go like somewhere and I could play silently or whatever. I'm not going to gig with it. But like for the same size and stuff, and obviously for way more, the Nano Cortex literally does all that, like, because it's a built-in interface. So there's a lot of really great stuff out there. I'm like for my, funny enough, for my setup and stuff, because it's functional. Like I have, studio speakers. I used to have a sub, but it was really loud, so I got rid of the sub. But I have like a Focus 18i20 rack interface to do all my XLR and 1/4-inch inputs and my mic inputs. Everything stays connected, and that's just running into Logic. I run everything into Logic, and I have a session saved, and that's what I found to be really convenient for me, because I have KRK, these Rocket 5, thank you, Rocket 5 speakers up on stands mounted, but I also, and that's coming out, the output 1, 2, but output 3, 4, I actually have it going to a Sennheiser G3 wireless pack with in-ears. So like if I ever needed to, silently do a tutorial or something, I could easily, without having all these cables, just because of the space. I don't like cables. But for like this has taken a little bit of time, and it has a bunch of connections and stuff. But I've had to do a lot of tweaking with like the input gain of the different stuff, and I'm having to mess with it. And I've purchased this iConnectivity 4C little interface. It's inside the house, but I built a tracks rig for our church, and I have it here. And I plugged into it last night, and I didn't have to adjust any gains, because there's not like input gain levels and stuff. Like, it tracked everything itself. And what I realized with that, which was really cool, is that one I didn't have any like distorted breakup fizziness that I've been getting from some of my lower quality interfaces and stuff. So it was a lot less headache to have to deal with and stuff. But that's the thing, is there's so many different interfaces out there. Yeah, this is $60 on Facebook, but it's brand new, a couple $100, and they're great. It's just finding what works for you, really. I have went through so many interfaces to find the ones that work for me. And do I want to spend the money and get the Apollos? Of course I do, because I love the UA stuff and they sound great. But for right now, this works for me. Or I use my Quad Cortex that people will kill me, but it literally just sitting on a shelf under my desk right now, just because I'm using something else right now. But that's an interface.
Or just hanging from cables on the back of a rack. There you go.
Hey, that wasn't. It was tipped backwards, so it wasn't by itself. But yes,
did people give you crap for that photo, Brian?
They did. They're like, you're stressing those cables. I'm like, it's leaning back. It's like on a slant. It's not moving. So yeah, I had people say, but like that is an interface. The Nano Cortex interface. Like, there's all these units out there. It's just like what Grant said. Finding what works for you without feeling like you have to blow your entire budget on it, because there's plenty of stuff. The Tone X's are amazing. I've been doing some builds lately, and for a DAW, I literally plugged into a Tone X1, USB-C'd into my computer, and put in an amp with some reverb delay, and I literally hit one note. I was like, that, like, obviously no one else hears it, but I hear it. I'm like, that sounds really good. So
we have to put a caveat on that of, so you say. No one was there to witness it.
So I said, well,
I sounded awesome. Let me tell you.
And all my kids heard was my kids heard because
yeah. I have to say, a flex for all of us guitar players, myself included, who don't gig, is I was just thinking, talking about my home studio, and I am someone, I only do stadium tours.
Oh, of course.
If there's not 20,000 people there, I don't play. I don't gig. And so, I'm using
his rider.
Exactly. Check out my rider. So, that to say, I actually never gig, but that's because the right stadium tour hasn't come along yet. And my home studio is I was using the Scarlett 8-channel, I guess i8, Focusrite i8, whatever that is. And then I moved over to the UA 4-channel, the X4. And for what I'm doing, this may just be me. I noticed a slight difference, not a huge difference. The user experience was much better on Universal Audio, but both were very easy to use. But I'm doing basic stuff, as in, I think the most complex setup I usually do is 3 channels, a guitar and a mic. And that's just for videos and stuff like that. And usually it's 1 guitar channel, 1 mic. And so I'm still trying to run tests at home of like, how big is the difference for paying 5 times the price, give or take. And so, I'd be curious if you guys have ever kind of run, I mean, Brian, you just mentioned the distortion on the lower quality devices. And Mason, I don't know if you've ever used the Scarlett stuff in any depth and compared it, but I've been told by people in the know that it's worth it to get a better interface when you're doing recording and trying to do videos and all that. But the difference has not been
not realized, huh?
Not to the degree I thought it would be, if I'm being totally honest. But I would still say it was a good choice, but more probably on the user experience side than anything else.
Yeah.
But I also don't have ears of gold either. Like, I'm not sitting here like, the 5K is up half a dB. I can hear that. Like, I'm not that guy. So I'm kind of just happy if it sounds like a guitar and I can move on with my life.
You're saying you got tone beer goggles.
I definitely do. I do. I'm enjoying it.
She's a 10.
I couldn't be happier. Everything's good with tone beer goggles.
That tone's a 10.
Oh my God.
But yeah, I mean, you don't need much. These days, you do not need much, and you can record some great sounding guitar. I think that's the ultimate takeaway for what? You have a basic pedal board and a guitar. For another couple $100, you can record some really good sounding guitars into your DAW. Share them on our Chairmen of the Boards Facebook page and show us what you're working with.
Right. Well, there are all those people, man, that had to put those poor souls that have the tone beer goggles and they'll hear, like a Dumble, and they'll be like, that sounds just like my Fender Mustang.
My solid state 10-inch.
Digital modeling. And I get that same tone out of my Fender Mustang. And I just say, God bless you, brother. We're going to start a GoFundMe for you so you can get your hearing fixed. Get well soon.
But what a way to live, right? I mean, we all have beer goggles in our life in one way or another.
And that's great. You know what?
Enjoy it.
If you are getting, that sound out of your amp and you really believe it, like, what a relief.
Yep.
Right? Like,
you just saved yourself a lot of money.
You don't have to do it. Yeah, you don't have to. Your work, your tone work is done.
Yep.
You're complete. You are fulfilled. You have met your life's perfect purpose sonically. There's no more work to do.
Yep.
So I guess in some respects we should just be saying, like, what a relief for this person.
What a relief.
Exactly.
What a relief.
Enjoy.
God bless. So we don't have to start the GoFundMe for that.
Oh, okay.
But that was fun. It was a fun discussion. I like that we had a little variety today. If you're a listener, let us know what you think. If we should be doing more of these sort of potpourri conversations of sort of current events and releases, and then maybe tying that into another topic, as we did today, we're open, and we just need your feedback to know what direction to take it. As always, we love reviews as long as they're honest. If you're listening to this podcast and you like it or you don't like it, you want to let other people know so other people will find it or not, we appreciate honest reviews on iTunes or Spotify or wherever it is that you listen to your podcast where a review is able to be given. We deeply appreciate that. We also have a Facebook group called, as you might have guessed, Chairmen of the Boards. And you can join that for free without any obnoxious questions to get you in to enter the group. All you have to do is click join, and believe it or not, you become part of the group. And it's a great space where you can engage with us and other people that are listening or watching the podcast, talk about gear, tone, pedalboard strategies, etc. A very cool community. It's been growing like gangbusters. So we appreciate all of you who are there, and also reposting parts of these conversations where they might be applicable to a larger conversation. So thank you for that. Thank you for being here. And thank you to our sponsors for making today possible. And until next week, Brian and Grant, we will see everybody on the next episode.
Bye, guys. See you guys.